as I said earlier, if you feel like you want to fall asleep, go for it. Just if you could hold the snoring down a little bit. I'm used to that, or if you feel like you want to leave. But anyway, my name is Tom Lewanski. I am the Natural Resource Manager for Dakota County Parks. Dakota County has 5 parks, if I get this right. There's 2 park reserves. There are 3 regional parks, and there is 1 county park. In addition to that, we have a pretty extensive and growing greenway system. That's basically a trail with as much ecological connectivity as we can mash into it. That's why the natural resource people are involved in it. There are 7 of us in the natural resource program. I have 4 specialists that do basically project managers. We have a senior ecologist. We have a bison technician. How cool is that job? This evening, my man Tyler back there contacted me and asked me if I would come and talk about our bison project. And I said no, that I had an excellent family vacation, and I thought these people would love to see that. No, I'm teasing. Come on, people, work with me here a little bit, would you? So I know some of you are well aware of this stuff, but I'd just like to start with having a common understanding that our native prairie contains thousands of species of plants and animals. It's really an incredible place, and I would encourage you to visit some of the Dakota County parks. There are some beautiful prairies, both remnants and restored prairies there. At one time, I apologize, I don't have an original vegetation map of this beautiful county. This is Dakota County from about 1840, a snapshot in time before there was much European settlement in the area. So prior to farming coming in here and people moving in and building cities and stuff. So the yellow, if that's what color that is, was prairie. The orange was oak savanna. There is a little bit of big woods in there. There's some wetlands and things. So it's about 80%, I kept about 80% prairie and oak savanna. Now the prairie was and is driven by 3 major drivers, if you will. The climate, which is all around us. If it's changing, there's not much we can do about that on the local level. Fire was a major driver, and grazing was a major driver of this ecosystem. We utilize fire as a management tool. This happens to be Measville Ravine Park Reserve, not too far from here. If you get a chance, it's my favorite park. You can go out there walking for hours and hours and not see another person. If you despise people like me, that's one of the best parks you can get to, because the views from up there are fantastic. Anyway, the bottom line is that we utilize fire to help manage the prairies. Fire does a lot for the prairie. The grazing was missing. The climate here is just around us. We utilize fire. And the piece that we are missing, and I've been doing this, I've been working in land conservation for 35 years or so, and I've done a lot of prairie restoration in various places. And the piece that was always missing, and I was always wondering how we could incorporate or reintroduce that grazing piece. And the opportunity presented itself about 5 years ago. I'm not going to go too deep into the story, but I received a call. I gave a presentation at the School of Environmental Studies up at the zoo, and there was a county commissioner there in the audience, and the next morning he called me, fired me. No, he didn't. He didn't fire me. He said, Tom, I meant to talk to you about this. He had been talking with the executive director of the Minnesota Zoo, who was lamenting at the fact that there wasn't a place close by where the bison could just be out in the prairie. You know, but they do have bison at the Minnesota Zoo, fairly small display there. He wished that there was a place in the county or close by that people can come out and see bison out on the prairie. And the commissioner asked me, would we ever consider doing anything like that? And on the outside, I was trying to be real cool, but on the inside, I was jumping around like, this is it. So I said, boy, I don't know, Commissioner. I don't know. Let me think about that a little bit. And that embarked us on this journey. So the county board asked me to put together a couple of studies. We did all that. And 4 years later, in fact, we have bison out there. So the primary grazer, as you guess now, of the prairie was the bison, or bison, I think is the full scientific name. This happens to be down in the Konza Prairie, I believe, not at Spring Lake Park Reserve. The historic range of the bison reached almost from the Atlantic coast over into the Rockies, south into northern Mexico, and way up into northern Canada. It was a huge area that they would roam. At one time, the estimate is there were between 40 and 60 million bison that were in North America. And back in the 1800s, the numbers were decimated. They were down to about 1,000. Excuse me. I'm not going to get into the reasons why, but one of them is it was a concerted effort to control the Plains Indians, the Dakota and others. If they could control their primary grocery store and clothing store, they could control the indigenous people that lived out here. It was a concerted effort to get rid of the bison so that they controlled the indigenous people. So ecologists consider them a keystone species, which is a species that is so important to the ecosystem and home that it lives in that if you take it away, the system doesn't work as it used to. It doesn't, I'll just leave it at that. The ecosystem is hurting without that keystone species living in it. So this is a part of the feasibility study. I knew nothing about bison. I mean, if I met one on the street, I would tell you it's a bison, but I didn't know much about it. So, excuse me. So we did this feasibility study. There's a lot of research that's been done on bison. Excuse me. Wait, wish I had some water. I have some right here. Excuse me a moment. Just talk amongst yourselves. So through their behavior and physical traits, they really do impact the prairie ecosystem. The primary thing, and one of the reasons that we were excited to bring them in was that 90 to 95% of their diet are the grasses. When you do prairie restoration, the grasses tend to dominate. And, as you may know, the tall grass prairie grasses can be 6, 7, 8 feet tall, the big blue stem, the Indian grasses, things like that. If you are a forb or a flower trying to grow in that, and you're living in with these plants that are so much taller than you have a hard time getting the sun's energy. With the bison eating the grasses, what they're doing is they're providing opportunities for the forbs to flourish more. And that is a cascading effect. If you have more forbs, you have more insects. More insects, you have more birds, and you have more reptiles and amphibians. So there's that cascading effect. And I'm just going to give some examples of the impact that they have on the prairie. Their wallows are fascinating. So they have this habit of just laying on the ground and they roll back and forth, many times to get the dust on them that might keep insects off. So these animals can be up to a ton. And if you have something that large rolling on the ground, you tend to compact the soil and you make these little divots in the ground. And they will hold water. And it provides drinking water when it rains for the other animals that are living out on the prairie. It provides breeding habitat for the andirons or frogs and toads out there. And in fact, this is not going to mean anything to you, but in paddock 1, once we left there, we went out there and started looking at these. This is one of the wallows, and that is cracked mud there. And in fact, this actually happens out there. This is one of their wallows that was holding water. And there are a number of these wallows out there. It's really fun to watch them doing this. So in addition to holding water, imagine if you are a little prairie seed, your job is to try to get down to mineral soil so that you can germinate and grow. The prairie plants it's so dense, not only from the living plants, but the thatch that's down there, that your chances of reaching mineral soil, I think, are pretty slim, unless there's a disturbance in the prairie. And so these wallows are providing that disturbance, providing that mineral soil so that these seeds hit that and they can germinate and grow. You tend to find some of the earlier successional plants growing in these wallows. And just a few other ways that they impact the prairie. The seeds cling to the animals for helping with dispersal. Their scat provides habitat for insects. One of the things that we're studying there are the dung beetles that might be attracted to their scat. Grassland birds, if I have an expertise in this world, it's for birds. And many of our grassland birds are in decline because, as you can guess, most of our prairie, native prairie, is gone. There's less than 1% of it. The birds that are not only birds, but the birds that are dependent on the prairie are also in decline. But the grassland birds use the fur from the bison to line their nest with, so their babies have a nice soft place to live on, and rubbing of their horns helps to minimize the woody plant encroachment. And it goes on and on and on. It's amazing the impact that they have on the ecosystem in which they live. When we found out that we were going down this road of possibly reintroducing bison, even though it took us a long time, 4 years to do this, excuse me, what it allowed us to do is to get in there and do a lot of pre-treatment surveys. So we got out and we did transects, pretty good idea of the plants that are living out on the prairie. We've been doing breeding bird surveys. We've been surveying the reptiles and amphibians, the bumblebees, you name it, as much as we can document. For 4 years, we were able to collect data on this. Bring in the bison, the treatment, and now we're going to continue those studies over the long term to document the impact that the bison are having there. I haven't coughed like 30 years. I don't know what's going on tonight. So it's from an ecologist point of view, this is really exciting experiment to be able to get in before the treatment, figure out what's there, and then to follow it over time. This is where Dan comes in. I think I called you, didn't I, Dan, a couple of years ago?
Out of the blue.
Out of the blue. I had seen a paper, I think, that he wrote. Maybe I'll just send messages to you telepathically. So we started discussing, and Dan is interested in the soil. And he was interested in working with us to determine if there is any impact that the bison might be having on the chemistry of the soil, specifically carbon, but other things. I don't know if you wanted to take a couple of seconds, Dan, and be more articulate about it than I'm being.
Sure. And for those who don't know me, it's Doug. Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Hernandez. I'm a professor in the biology department at Carleton College. As Tom said, I got contacted by Tom with an interest in studying the impacts of these bison from a bunch of different angles. And the folks, and Tom will surely talk about this more. The folks in Dakota County have been surveying so much of the biology of the system, but the work on soils requires some equipment and stuff that's just not easily accessible to you know, the biological staff at Dakota County. So it was a contribution that my lab could make. And with students, including some of them that are in the room right now, we did a pre-survey of soils before the bison were added, and then we've done some work this summer to try and look at the impacts on soil processes of those bison wallows that Tom just talked about. So we've taken measurements of greenhouse gas emissions and soil carbon and nitrogen.
Thank you so much.
Soil, with the hope that we can watch this happen over time and see what impacts the bison have when they're reintroduced.
I'd love to have other people do as much as possible the work that I should be doing. So I appreciate Dan working with us on this. We try to get as many partnerships as we can so that we can all learn more and more about these things. So I appreciate Dan and his students' help. By the way, the students, we do hire summer technicians that come out, and they get to do the fun stuff. They get out and do the plant surveys and the bird surveys and reptile surveys. If you have an interest in that, I will leave my card here. You can get a hold of me and think about next spring if you have the summer you'd like to spend with us doing some of the fun stuff out in the field for the reason why I got into this. But please contact me and we'll let you know when those positions open up.
Do you know what that is? No. Can you describe, is it a hula hoop?
It is a hula hoop. As a part of the survey work, the transect is this long straight line. You can see that these two people are walking along that transect and recording the plants that are along it. Another method, and I don't know much about this, is throwing the, just documenting all the plants that are within that circle, that hula hoop there, as a part of the protocol for doing the monitoring survey work. That, or I was out there hula hooping and I dropped it. Probably not that one. So we're finding some, you know, from a birder's perspective, some really fun, interesting birds, and I look forward to following these over time to see what sort of impact that they're having. SGCN, SGCN, are species of greatest conservation need. These are species, not only birds, but other animals that are in decline. As these are some of the ones that we're finding out there on the bison prairie. That's a dick thistle right there in the picture. This project is also really interesting and fascinating and fun because it's an opportunity for the story to be told about the relationship that indigenous people had with the bison for thousands and thousands of years. And so we've engaged and had discussions with some of the local indigenous communities, one being the Shakopee, Metawakan, Sioux, and the Prairie Island Indian community that also has a bison herd down there, probably 300 animals. And they came up and they've done some ceremonies. And we're just starting to build that relationship. I'm hoping to provide the opportunity for them to tell their story. They don't need this older white man telling their story. We want to give the opportunity for them to tell their own story, their own truths about this. So getting down to it, where do we get the bison from? I'm anticipating some of your questions. We have joined the Minnesota Bison Conservation Herd, which presently it's the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. It's the Minnesota Zoo. It's the Zolman Zoo down in Rochester, and now Dakota County. And there's some others that are considering doing it as well. The goal of that partnership is to establish a statewide herd of 500 animals, where we have maybe 250 animals at 4 different locations right now. doing our forage analysis, we anticipate a maximum number of 15. We have 150 acres of prairie here. We're being very conservative. We may up that number, but we conservatively give them 30% utilization of the forage in any one paddock. And once we see, just looking at it from our eyes, oh, they've eaten about 30%, we move them on to a different paddock. I was hoping, as we were planning this, that I would be able to have one large range, if you will, or prairie that they could just roam around and do what they want to do. The problem is the orange line there is the Mississippi River Greenway. It's a trail that goes from the city of Hastings up to St. Paul. It's a beautiful trail. But as you can see, it goes right through the middle there. So one option was, well, let's move the trail. That was really expensive. The board would not go for that. And so what we decided to do is we broke up the 150 acres into these paddocks. And now that we have about a year under our belt, I actually like this better, because if we're seeing that bison are having too much of an impact in a particular area, we can give that area rest and then move them off to a different paddock. Without tripping, we have a little migration corridor that goes right along here. Last winter, they came from 3 different places. We got 4, I believe, from Blue Mountain State Park. We got 3 from Minneopa State Park, and we got 1 from the zoo down in Rochester. And so they were coming to a new area, and they needed to get to know each other. It is a female-dominated society. It's a true herd animal. So over the winter, we had them right here, away from the trail, away from people. We gave them a couple of months to become a herd, join together, and get to know their new homes. In the spring, we moved them all the way west, about 1.5 miles up to paddock 2. And they're now in 4, and we're going to move them in a couple of weeks back over into 6. As you can see, this park goes right along the Mississippi River. And so the bison really is a wonderful thing about this park, but there's so many other wonderful things about it. It's right on this internationally significant flyway for birds. You can sit out there now and see pelicans, all kinds of birds that utilize this particular flyway. The views from up there are pretty spectacular. We also have fisher, otter, badger that live in the park. So, as we're, again, going down this journey, down this road, people were concerned about what? That they were going to get out and they were going to start jumping on people and beating them up and stuff. And so we put up a fence. If you're a 2,000-pound bison, there's not much that's going to keep you in, short of putting up a brick wall. So we have a 7-foot-high woven wire fence. It's a visual barrier for them. So far in the year, again, we've had a year under our belt. We haven't experienced any of them trying to challenge the fence. These animals, as I said, the males could be up to 2,000 pounds. They can jump straight in the air 6 feet. I'm lucky if I can get 6 inches off the ground. And they can run about 35 miles an hour. There's no way you're going to be able to outrun them. So the fence had to be 7 feet tall so they couldn't jump over it. Another challenge, a value that we had, is we didn't want this fence to be a barrier for the other wildlife that were out there. And so everything in the world is a negotiation. So we had to negotiate with our risk management office to put the fence near the trail. We had to put it at 6 inches, and if it was off more in the wild areas, it could be up to 1 foot. And it was fun watching over the winter that it was working, that we had squirrels and fox, coyotes, things like that could get underneath the fence. So it seems like animals are coming and going as they normally would. Was there an impact to them from the fence? Probably, but they're still utilizing this area. There are white-tailed deer that get into the fence, but they can easily jump a 6-foot fence. They come and go out of it. So what we built into this, everything that you see in red there is a gate. If a bison was to get out of the range, because it's a herd animal, it's going to want to get back with its friends. It's want to get back to its family. It's not going to go run off unless it's got some sort of a disease or something, and it's not thinking right. So this is where our partnership, and they provided a lot of wisdom to us. If a bison gets out and wants to get back in, it's just going to roll them back and forth on the fence. So what we did was we put in 18 gates, and so all we had to do if one gets out, then we just have to entice it to go to the gate and let it back in with its friends. Each of the paddocks has a water trough. There isn't any natural water out there, so no matter where they are, they have access to fresh water. Surprisingly, for me, it's an interesting project. It was a fun project, and where you learn it from every day. But to me, what we're trying to do is we're trying to stitch back together this ecosystem, this tall grass prairie ecosystem, by reintroducing plants and animals that were here at one time but no longer are. But some people think it's a pretty big deal, and I guess it is. Yeah, I don't mean to downplay it. This project has won some statewide awards, and we found out recently that it won a national award from the National Association of Counties. So it's gratifying that other people are acknowledging we are the first county, at least in the state, to reintroduce bison as a member of this community, not as a zoo. As I said, Zolman Zoo and the Minnesota Zoo have bison, but we are bringing this community member back into the prairie so that they can be bison and impact the prairie as they have for thousands and thousands of years. All of the bison that we got were females. We wanted to dip our toe in the water, learn what we're doing, have them acclimate to the area. Let's be honest. You bring males into a situation and all hell breaks loose, right? We just cause problems. So we thought that let's establish the herd. We'll have females, and in a couple of years, we will bring in a bull, and it'll be a breeding herd. We knew that the bison coming in might be pregnant. As I said, they came from Minneopa and from Blue Mountains. But we had no idea. They don't test them for that. You can't tell a pregnant bison from an unpregnant bison. So one day I was out there with my son, and I was looking at birds, and a bison was, I'll show a picture in a moment of the exact bison. This bison was standing over in an area that had been burned recently, and there was a bunch of logs laying around and some brush, and I could not tell. It was becoming dusk, and I couldn't tell if he was standing next to a log or if there was a baby that was just born. And in fact, then it moved, and I knew right then that it was a young one that was just born. Within seconds, they are standing up, and within a couple of minutes, they can run. If you think about it from an ecological or point of view, if you're out on the Great Plains and your herd is continuing to move, they're going off, you can't lay around for minutes or hours. You got to follow your mom in the herd, or the grizzlies and the wolves are going to eat you. It's amazing how soon after birth they're up roaming around. And then over the next week, we had 3 more births out there. So we had 4 babies that were there, and it was such a wonderful surprise to see them. Unfortunately, they're all males. And so they will be able to stay with us until next fall, and then they have to leave. We don't want any shenanigans, as we say. We don't want them breeding with their moms or with their sisters. And so they will be moved out, and I think next fall we will bring in a bull to breed. So if we bring in a bull in fall of 24, he'll breed during the rut of 25. His young will then be born in the spring of 26. So if you want to go out, I would encourage you to go up there and look at them. I just wanted to include this map in there just to give you a sense of how to get there. Highway 55 goes from western Minnesota, ends in Hastings, goes down through the Twin Cities. So it's right off of 55. You can get off on Pine Bend Trail or Fahey. And I would encourage you to go down there and take a look at this park. It really is a fabulous place. If you're at all interested in volunteering with us, we utilize volunteers not only for this project, but many other things that we do in the parks. But for this specific project, if you're interested in educating or being a trail monitor, we have volunteers that sit out and greet people that are coming out to see the bison or utilizing the trail, sharing natural history information with people that visit. We have volunteers that help us to come out and plant plugs or plants out there. We're trying to increase the diversity of plants out there as well. We have rusty patch bumblebees, which is a federally endangered bumblebee that lives out here, so we're trying to provide more nectar plants from them. So if you have any interest in doing that sort of work, I have my card here. You can grab that, or you can look it up in the Dakota County's website. I usually don't give commercials, but this one really looks cool. Ken Burns, that has done some incredible documentaries and films, put one together about the American buffalo, and it's going to air on Minnesota Public Television this coming Monday. It's a 2-part series. The first part will be on Monday. The second part will be on Tuesday. So I'd encourage you to watch that. It looks really good. And there, that was the young right there. You can see it's in this brushy area. They're called red dogs when they are born because they look reddish. They have all lost their red color now. They look just like their moms. And they will put on about 400 pounds between the time they're born in April or early May to this time of the year. It's amazing how quickly they grow in size.
Still the land, the sky, the wind, say run, welcome home. The land still remembers it's the blue stem in the bud, and the ancestors within you, there is memory in their blood. There will be a place to wallow, there will be room to run. Better than a nickel back, you're back where you belong. Welcome home, welcome home to a place you've never been. Still the land, the sky, the wind, same unknown. Welcome home. All with the weather wonder at the thunder you could make thunder without lightning, with dust clouds in your way. We wish you many seasons, we wish you healthy young, the occasional mild winter, shade from the summer sun. Welcome home, welcome home to a place you've never been. Still the land, the sky, the wind say you are known. Welcome home. Head down into the wind, you know what December brings. You know how to face the cold. Need another spring. Welcome home, welcome home to a place you never can. Still the land, the sky, the wind say you are known. Welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home.
Excellent. You saw the cow that had the wonky horn? She's the lead cow. The other ones follow her around, and she's the boss. The backstory is on this, when the bison were going to arrive, I figured I have to get them a present of some sort. And I asked John Gorka, a friend of mine, to write a song, and that's what we came up with. So with that, if there's any questions you have, I'd be happy to answer them or make something up. But thank you for coming out and listening to me talk about our bison. Yes?
Besides man being a predator, are there any other predators you have to watch out for?
Not anymore. Their natural predators were grizzlies, wolves, maybe lions, mountain lions. Not really humans would be the only ones. Yeah. Yeah.
In the area there, the park was located, where's the water supply for the river? It seems like there's got to be more water, they not headed from the lake that's there.
So it's right on the river. They can't get to it because of the fence. The fence is between the river and them. You can see the water trough.
So that's all provided.
That's all provided for them. It's winterized, so they get most of their water in the winter from the snow, but of course sometimes we don't have snow. So each of the paddocks, as I said, has a winterized water trough so they have fresh water, which we go in every week, check and make sure they're working well to clean them out. Their safety and health is the most important thing to us. Anything else? Yes?
How do you move them safely to different paddocks?
They are acclimated to corn. That is their treat. They love it. To the point that, and they came to us like this from the state parks in order to, so there's two ways you can do it. You may have seen videos where people drive them with UTVs or trucks or something. That's very stressful. We want it to be stress-free for everybody, so we want to entice them. And so Carly, who is our bison technician, they know her really well. She gets in the toolkit with a bucket that has corn in it, and all she has to do now is wave the bucket. This is how it works. And then the lead cow comes up to her, wants some of that corn, and the rest of them follow them. And so we open up the gate, they go into the migration corridor, and they go into the other one, and we shut the gate, and it's time for a cigar. It's worked really well. We've only moved them 4 times, I think, since we had them, but we haven't had any issues at all. It's really worked well. We all prefer to do it in a much more positive way than a stress way, which only makes sense. Yeah, there was a question way back there. Yes, hi.
That was my question. We had the same one.
Okay. Excuse me, yes.
You mentioned that the one female is the lead. Do they challenge for leadership
Oh, they will, yeah.
and dominance?
Yes, I think once she, I don't, people ask me, did you name them? No, I'm not going to name them, but I found out that some of the staff did name her. Her name is Cersei, from a movie you may be familiar with. She is 7 years old. They will live to be 20 in captivity. As she starts getting older, no doubt that there will be another cow or two that challenge her for the lead. So every fall, the 2 state parks do their management days. They get them all together. They go through a chute, squeeze chute, like farmers utilize as well, get it down to 1 bison, and that's where they're given their immunizations, blood is taken, just do a medical checkup on them. And so that's when they move them out. We're likely to get another cow and calf pair this fall, if they can meet our requirements. We want a cow that is less than 3 years old, and the baby has to be a female. We don't want another male. We didn't think it was fair to it to bring it in this fall and then have it leave again next fall. And so if we can get a 3-year-old female with a female calf, we'll take them. So, I don't know if that answered your question. What else? What else you got? Yes.
I've got 2 questions. One, what is going to happen to those male cows? Where are they going to go? And then once you bring in that bull, is there any plans to like maintain genetic diversity and like trade bison essentially?
Yes, the second one first. The partnership is right now figuring out where the Minnesota Zoo keeps the stud book. They know the genetics and the history of all the bison. They work with Texas A&M, that I think knows the genetics on most of the bison in North America, or a lot of them. And so we're having discussions now about, okay, where is the bull going to come from to be in here? It could come from Yellowstone. It could come from the Badlands over there. So that's yet to be determined. I'm glad I don't have to deal with that sort of thing, but there's a geneticist at Minnesota Zoo that keeps all of that straight. They will get the bull for us and bring it in. And the other question was?
What's going to happen to the male calves? Are they part of that like program then?
Yeah, well, that's exciting. So what the state has been doing the last number of years is they auction them off. And you could probably guess where they go when they're auctioned off. They become food. We are developing a relationship, and I apologize, I forget the name. There's an indigenous bison association in North America, and we're building a relationship with them. The state parks are getting rid of 40 to 50 bison, and they're going to that organization, which will give them out to other indigenous nations, either to start their own herd or even just to provide food for them. I'm hoping that by the time we need to get rid of some of our excess bison next fall, that we can just tie into that system and provide it to indigenous communities. I don't want them to go to, but there's some legal things because they are legally property of Dakota County. And I just can't give Dakota County property away. So I have to work with the county attorney, but I don't think that's going to be a big deal. I'm hoping the county board will say, yeah, that makes more sense to give them to an indigenous community than to sell them. But that's our plan. Hi.
Yeah. You mentioned that it's been helpful to have the paddocks kind of separated from
Yes.
each other, in case the bison are having too much of an impact. Is
Yeah.
that something you've seen? Have there been negative consequences?
Not negative consequences, but so They tend to stay in one particular area. It's called a grazing lawn, and they'll stay there. So as they're, and the grazing lawn, you know, we've been doing this a year, so we know very little. So part of the regimen in managing the prairie is doing burns, and we have a whole schedule for burning part of these paddocks. And so we did a burn in paddock 4, if you could call that up in your mind's eye from the map. We burned 1/3 of that. And then when we brought the bison in there, maybe 3 weeks later, the grasses were, you know, 3 or 4 inches tall already. And they stayed right there because that nutritious new growth that's coming up, they were digging on that. And so it got to the point where, okay, you need to eat it somewhere else because we do want those plants to grow. And so we moved them over to paddock 1, and that allowed those plants to grow. So that's really the only, I don't want to say it's a negative impact. If they had all of Dakota County and Minnesota roam on, that wouldn't be an issue because they would move on. But that's the best way I have to answer that. Thank you. Hi.
So thinking like more long term, is the goal to work with like other counties and start similar projects in other areas that would possibly benefit from bison reintroduction, or are you planning on expanding the Spring Creek or Spring Lake area?
Both of those. Washington County is they're looking at doing this, a very similar thing. They may go a different route initially. If you've ever been up to Afton to Bellwin Conservancy, they do have bison. They bring them in the summer. They work with a private vendor that brings them in. Essentially, it's the vendor who's bringing his bison there to fat them up, to be totally honest with you, and then they sell the meat. Well, it does improve, if I could use that term, the prairie that the Bellwin Conservancy has, so it's kind of a twofer there. And Washington County may go down that road first. We decided that we were going to get them. They're going to live here 12 months out of the year, and for good or bad, that they're living out there. The Department of Natural Resources has, I think, 2 other parks that are considering starting some bison herds within them. So we're trying to expand the number of partners that are in this partnership. Again, our goal is 500 animals, so we need other partners to come in and help us achieve that.
Are the state parks herds part of that partnership, or are they separate?
They are part of this, yeah, they're part of the partnership, yes. That's where we got ours from. And another question people ask, are they genetically pure? And unfortunately, there are no genetically pure bison in North America, even the wild ones in Yellowstone area. Back when the numbers were down to less than 1,000, ranchers out there took a lot of them into their cattle herds, thinking that, well, maybe we can breed them together and we would get the benefits of both. That didn't work out very well, but what it did is it helped to keep this animal from going extinct. So there are some cattle genes, alleles in all of them, even if it's a tiny little bit. There's not much there, but you can't find a bison in North America that doesn't have some cattle genetic material in it. Well, with that, I want to thank you for coming out tonight. I apologize for hacking all over the place. I don't know what was going on. I got emotional or something, but so thank you. I would encourage you to come up and visit the parks in Dakota County. No doubt you have beautiful parks here in this county, but do they have bison? I don't think so. So anyway, you have a good evening. Thank you so much for coming out.